This video we're going to be doing some Copic coloring using the cool gray markers. This image is one of the Miss Anya stamps from the Greeting Farm, which you can find at thegreetingfarm.com. Okay, so we're going to start with C3 in her hair. Now I like to flick or use feather strokes, whichever you like to call it, from the ends of the hair. I also make sure that I hit kind of in there in the center where there's going to be some definition between the different sections of her hair. I'm also going to then flick from the bottom. C3 is going to be my lightest color that I'm using in the hair, so I'm just kind of getting it started there but leaving the center white. Then I'm going to go in with my darker color, which I'm just going up a little bit, which to a C5, and I'm going to flick in again, just not going quite as far as I did the first time. This will kind of intensify that color and give you a little bit more depth and transition of the colors, as well as separate the different sections of hair. Now I'm going to go back to my color 1, the first color I used, which was a C3. Sorry I didn't show you the pen cap. I'm going to flick in again, only this time going just farther than I did the first time, but still leaving the center white. Now that center part you can either leave completely bare, you can use a blender, or you can use a slightly lighter color, which is what I'm doing here with the C1. Now I'm going to do this next side. I did speed up the video a little bit just because I have to keep the videos under 10 minutes. So you just can kind of watch each section by section and kind of get a review of what we just did. Now I like to go the direction of the hair stroke, so you can kind of see how the illustrator gave you some direction with the wave of the lines. So I am flicking using those lines as my guide. So here I'm adding in the color 2, still trying to stick with the direction of the artist illustration lines of her hair. Going back in with my first color, flicking in a little bit further. That'll help blend everything together. Now you see here I've got the leftover white area. I'm just going to show you if you can use the colorless blender, but see there how sometimes you get some like pool of color. That's why I like to just use a lighter color to go over it to help keep things really smooth. Now this smaller area, if I have a small area, I usually just skip step 1, so I'm going straight to C5 and flicking in just a little bit, and then going back to C3. Still the center's not fully in, so then I'm using the C1 to kind of lighten it up. Now since these little sections of hair are small again, I'm skipping step 1, going straight to the step 2, which is to use the darker color, and again I'm going to try to flick using the lines already there for the direction of my flick strokes. Now I'm going back to the lighter color, flicking in again a little bit further, leaving that white spot in the center, and then going in with C1 to blend it all together. Make sure you go all the way to the edges to get it to be really smooth and give you a nice gradient. Doing the same thing down here with this bottom part. Now make sure that you want to get it nice and use the dark color right there in between the two sections, so that way you have some good definition between each kind of coil of the curl. One thing I like to do after I finish coloring hair is to go back in with my darker color and just hit some of those like little corner spots where the hair part is, here where her bows are, just adding in a smidgen of color. It just helps to kind of intensify and help the different areas pop. Now I want her dress to be black, but even though I want her dress to be black, I never actually use the color black. Right now I'm starting with a C9. It's a very dark color, and when I use really dark colors, it's real easy to lose where you're trying to color and add shadows to. So I'm going to start with my darkest color so that way it doesn't get so dark that I can't see what I'm doing. Now don't be afraid of using these dark colors like this. Just kind of slowly go around each thing. I do a close-up view here in a second, and I wasn't really paying attention to where the camera angle was. My preview screen shows me not seeing it at all, but I think in the bigger screen you'll be able to see. I'm just adding in a little bit of the black, or the C9, right towards the edge of her skirt. So you can kind of see it there, and I promise I move it. Okay. When you're using a dark color, so that you don't go over the line, start kind of far back and just move slowly, and the ink will kind of move out and get to that line. So just kind of move slow and slightly away from the line, and you don't have to be afraid of it. Okay, so going to C7, now I'm going to kind of start on right on those lines first, kind of getting them to blend out a little bit. It does look dark on the monitor screen, but you'll be able to see the color blending a lot better when you do this yourself at home. Okay, now I'm going to go to C5, which is the lightest color I'm going to use here in the black, and just kind of, again, starting on those edges and blending out to all the way to the edge there to make sure that you don't get any kind of puddles of color. Kind of go over. Now if you feel like you're over soaking your paper, you can always check the back there, and if it feels like your paper is getting too wet, just take a break from that area and go back to it later. This is just me filling in the top little puffs of her dress, just kind of the same way that we did with the other colors below. Now I'm just doing all the areas that had polka dots. I'm starting with the C3 and kind of just flicking in some color from the edges. Don't forget the bottom of her skirt, this kind of petticoat here. Just trying to go right underneath so that way you get a little bit of definition. I'm going in with the C1, filling in the rest of that color just pretty quickly, kind of starting there on where that line is, and then flicking out, filling the rest in. Now here for her apron, I want it to be a little bit darker than what her skin is going to look like. So I'm using a C1 right now, and I'm going to just go ahead and fill in the whole thing, not leaving any areas white like I often do, just because I want it to be a little bit darker than her skin. So just filling all that in. And then I'm going to go with the C3, which is going to be my shadow color. Make sure that I kind of go around where her arm is, because her arm would kind of be casting a shadow. Hitting along the edge of the apron as well. And then wanting to go just under where that tie is, which kind of helps give a little bit of definition. And then just a little bit more definition up there at the bust area. Okay, going back with a C1. I know this is very, very fast because I sped up the camera, but I'm just going to go through with the C1 again, blend it all through nice and neat. Okay, now for her face, I like to draw myself a guide. So this is what I'm doing right now, and then I go ahead and fill in the outside. I am using a C0 for this. I really like the zeros in the gray tones when coloring black and white. Now I'm using the C1 to add my shadow just around the outer edges of the face and underneath her hairline. I'm actually not going to go underneath her where her chin is, just because it's a small little area down there. Now going back in with the C1 or C0, excuse me, starting of course on those lines, getting that to blend, and then kind of a quick coat through the center, because I don't want to put in so much that I lose that little bit of lighterness in the center. Her neck is a very small area, so I'm starting with C1, add the shadow line, then going back in with C0 to fill it in. Going quickly because I am desperately at the end of my 10 minutes. For her arms, I'm just going to do kind of a quick little line with the C1, and then I'll go back in with my C0 to fill in the rest of her skin there. And that is the main part of my image.